Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Fandom Face-Off.
Mm,
Oh, it's new and it's shiny.
it
It
is.
is it's here to replace the content championship,
Yep,
which are showdown. We're on to our third iteration.
we
Um
are, which is wild.
so the Fandom Face-Off, let's explain. There are many fandoms in the nerd culture,
There
from your
are.
Star Wars fans to your Whovians of Doctor Who, your Harry Potter stans, the lot. There are so many. But what is truly the best fandom?
That's a good question.
Well, over the next few weeks and episodes, we're going to answer that question.
Yes, we are.
We have devised once again 6 simple categories to
We have.
allow us to decide what the best fandom is.
Yeah, make it a little bit easier on ourselves.
Exactly. Size. How big is the fandom?
Is it Drake sized?
Dedication. How dedicated is the fandom? How much do they bleed their particular franchise?
Mm-hmm.
How toxic is the fandom? Is it a fandom that while you're a part of, you choose not to interact with because you know it's just a bit shouty and screamy?
Mm.
Infighting. How many internal subcategories are there?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Weirdness. Do you feel uncomfortable admitting you're a part of this fandom because of the perception of them?
It's good. It's a good question.
And as always, we have a personal bias.
We do.
I believe we're probably technically part of all the fandoms we're going to discuss, at least one of us anyway.
Yeah, I imagine so.
And then we will decide which one we would rather. If we could
Lean.
only interact with one fandom, which
Mm-hmm.
one would we rather
Yeah.
stick with? We're starting off nice and easy this week, I think. 2 powerhouses:
Yeah.
Star Wars versus Marvel. Now,
Mm.
this isn't about the quality of the product. This is about the fandom.
Yeah. Purely the
And
fans.
and this is, of course, all films, TV, books. Anyone who enjoys any part of it is a part of the fandom.
Yeah.
So, let's get started.
Let's get into it.
Starting off with the size.
Whew. I mean,
These are juggernauts.
they are. They're both pop culture icons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like their fandoms roll deep, and it's a tough one. Because both been around for many years as well.
Mm.
So it's not like one is younger, so it hasn't had the time to grow. Like,
I mean, Star Wars is technically younger, but it's still ancient at this
well,
point.
yeah, technically younger, but still pretty old now at this point.
Yeah, like 40 plus years old.
I want to say Star Wars is a bigger fandom.
It's really difficult to say.
And you've got comic fans.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I would say Star Wars is absolutely global. There's no debating that.
Yeah.
You go anywhere, they know of and they love Star Wars.
Mm.
And you can absolutely say the same about Marvel. But it's kind of interesting because obviously it's the largest film franchise in history. Yes, their
Yeah.
numbers are obviously a touch skewed because there's just been so many films, but they are, without a doubt, the largest film franchise in history. But at the same time, if you look at it, in the films, they've only really been able to get across 2 of their 4 biggest selling points well. So, like in the comics, the 4 powerhouses are Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hulk, and Fantastic Four.
Yes.
That was the bread and butter of the comics before the films.
Yeah.
And only kind of Spider-Man and Wolverine have really been done any justice on the big screen.
True.
And yet Wolverine and the Fantastic Four are still huge. And it's interesting because you've got all of these niches that kind of exist within like even the Marvel comic fandom for certain characters. You've got X-Men fans, you've got Avengers fans, you've got Spider-Man fans, Blade fans.
Mm.
Marvel have got such a plethora of characters. There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
And also, Spider-Man is the biggest superhero.
Yeah, see, that was what I was going to mention. Like you said,
Like Spider-Man himself could have his
yeah,
own fandom,
that's
pop culture
something I
wise.
was like. You were saying Star Wars is globally known, like around the world, people know Star Wars. And then I think if you were to go like Marvel, around the world, people know Spider-Man. And yes, the other ones that are big would, and also now the MCU, I'm sure there's other characters that are just
Yeah.
as global, but like one character alone kind of carries Marvel around.
But it's not even. I don't even think that's like a knock on Marvel though. I think
No,
I look at that as the point is Spider-Man himself is so big
yeah,
you could compare him to Star Wars
yeah,
and DC and Harry Potter just by himself. So once you then add in all the other stuff Marvel does and all of the additional fans that creates unrelated to Spider-Man, I don't
mm.
think I can say Star Wars are bigger.
It's so difficult. I think here's my thought process. If you break it down, it's like you've got Star Wars films and Marvel films.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the Star Wars film fans is larger than the Marvel because mainly I want to say that because of the generations Star Wars films have spread across.
Spider-Man No Way Home made
True,
$2 billion in the middle of a pandemic.
true. But then I was gonna say like Marvel Comics is a way bigger fan base than the fan base that follows Star Wars comics and Star Wars books.
Yes. And also the Star Wars comics, not the books, Star Wars comics only exist because of
True,
Marvel.
yeah.
Because Marvel makes
Yeah,
the
makes
Star Wars
prints them.
comics because
Yeah.
they're all owned by Disney, obviously.
So I do think when you start to look at it, like Marvel is just spread so far.
Yeah, I believe, and obviously you can only put this in so much context around like the fandom itself, but I believe Star Wars is valued at like 12 billion
Hmm.
and Marvel's like 50 billion.
There you go then. I think that speaks volumes as well.
That talks about obviously like the money making potential.
But still.
I do just think size wise it has to be Marvel, just because you will meet a Marvel diehard fan who's not even a fan of Spider Man, or potentially
Yeah.
any of the big four, and they're still gonna be they will still be a part of the fandom.
Yeah.
So yeah, dedication.
I kind of want to like my brain immediately goes to there are some hardcore dedicated Star Wars fans.
Oh, I actually think this one's quite easy.
Okay.
I think it is Star Wars as well, because Star Wars, while it's a very large universe, like I just said about Marvel, there's so many characters
Mm,
that you can love a character and not give a fuck about anything else.
yeah.
And in my head, that means to be a Star Wars fan, you have to be more dedicated to Star Wars because
Yeah.
there are fewer characters that are more intertwined, so it's more difficult to just love a character and ignore everything else.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I also respectfully, there's so much less content for Star Wars. So to be like, you've got less to watch and read than Marvel does. So like you have to be like pretty dedicated on just that small amount of content.
And also, on the flip side,
Okay.
Star Wars was so successful as films first that they then felt the need to make comics and books.
True.
Based off the comics, Marvel were almost going to go bust, which is why they got bought by Disney.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think dedication wise, Star Wars fans might be unrivaled. For
Yeah.
better or for worse, they
Well, yeah,
ain't
we'll
going
get to
anywhere.
that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do think the Star Wars fans will have stuck by Star Wars
Yes.
very strongly.
Yes. Um So obviously with the last two, size and dedication, you want to be the bigger one. You want to be more dedicated.
You do.
This next one, you want to be the little boy here.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the toxic one.
No, you don't.
Now, I've got a feeling this is going to come across like we're claiming one is not toxic at all and one is the worst thing ever. And I want to make it very clear that is not the case. These are both pretty toxic fan bases.
Yeah, they both have their issues.
However, Star Wars, at times when it gets bad, is some of the most disgusting stuff you will ever see.
Yeah.
They don't relent. They'll target children, they'll target actors, writers, directors, stuntmen,
each other.
fucking motion capture. Anyone who disagrees with them a little bit, they are just so vile towards at times. Don't get me wrong, as with every fandom, it is not everyone. But it is a very prevalent problem throughout the Star Wars fandom that just doesn't seem to want to go away.
Yeah, when you can put it as simply as Star Wars fans made some child actors and like actors like Christian like quit acting. Like they made people quit acting from their response to a set of films.
Yes.
I can't really say Marvel fans have made any actors or actresses quit full stop. They might have moved away from Marvel, but they haven't given up acting.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And also, some of them people who got pushed away from acting, they were doing it before the peak of the internet as well.
Yeah. This was like
the little boy who played Anakin in Phantom Menace was like 1999, 2000 or whatever. And they pushed that kid away from acting with the virile abuse he got.
Yeah, through press and through other things. Yeah, no, it was
crazy.
And then I'd like to say, I'm sure there are Star Wars Marvel fans that kind of are toxic to each other over, oh, well, this period of Marvel comics was better or whatnot. But there's a certain... Star Wars has a certain level it reaches where you've got like the OG trilogy fans are like, no, you're wrong for liking the prequels.
Well, that's moving a little bit onto infighting.
It is, but it still leans into the talk. There's toxicity spews onto each other a little bit as well.
Yeah, they just kind of want to... They are very all... When they're not happy, they can't just be calm with saying, I didn't like that. They feel a need to make the other person as angry and as upset as whatever's made them that angry and upset. Don't get me wrong, Marvel has its moments where it's abhorrent.
Yeah.
Some of the reaction towards actresses especially, some of the sexism is vile. I'm never going to claim I'm perfect. The one thing I will claim is that I've never ever given shit to an actor for just trying to act, and I've definitely not been vile about them as a person because of it. Some of the shit, especially I forget her name, Brie Larson and Amar Delaney have had to deal with just for being cast and doing a phenomenal job, is crazy. The kind of she, you idiots. But what I will say is, and I mean, you can make the same argument for Star Wars, I guess, but especially in Marvel, it seems to be a more of a vocal minority, and I always see more people when it's a Marvel person doing it. I always see more people in their comments telling them to grow up.
Yeah.
Whereas in Star Wars, they kind of try to make counterpoints. And yes, having a discussion is good sometimes, but sometimes when someone's being vile, you need to just go, log off. You've had enough. Go away.
Yeah, I do think the Star Wars fandom has got better in recent years because our generation has grown up and is becoming louder. But there was a very strong period of Star Wars fandom that was unfortunately very toxic.
Now, infighting, I think, is where it gets very interesting. Because as you already kind of alluded to, Star Wars is very much you have one trilogy you like, and that is the only one you're allowed to like.
And then you've got the people that are like, oh, the original and the prequels are the only rightful Star Wars. All this new Disney stuff is like there's pre-Disney and after Disney, and it's like there's infighting in so many different ways within Star Wars.
You get infighting about individual films. It's
Yeah,
crazy. You've got, and it's like, I don't think Star Wars necessarily helps itself, but I don't think it needs to help itself. Like, we sit here, you love more of the magic-y side of Star
yeah,
Wars. I love the political side of Star Wars.
yeah,
It's beautiful, but the kind of divide that creates, unfortunately, kind of parallels that of real world politics.
yeah.
It,
It's
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 wild
crazy.
sometimes.
You'll get
Uh,
people who are like diehard original trilogy fans, and like I said, they're like, only Lucasfilm Star Wars is real. Everything Disney did doesn't count before Disney made it all political. And me and you just sit here and laugh because their media literacy is in the bin if they don't realize that Star Wars has always been political. It's dreadful. The amount
yeah,
of infighting is chaos.
it is at times, and I'm glad that there's almost the younger, like our generation, are getting louder and being like, no, like we are eating good for Star Wars. Like it's stop being this whole like OG trilogy versus like there's more people pushing back against it, but there is still unfortunately a lot of people set in their ways with like
It is absolutely fine, and this might be an unpopular opinion actually. It's absolutely fine to have your own canon of what you accept as canon and what you
yeah,
don't. That is absolutely fine. Go ahead, do it. No one can control what you want to choose about your fictional world is real or not.
yeah,
But do not, if you decide you've got your own particular canon that you like to live by, try and force that on other people.
yeah. Like it's the forcing of your POV onto others that is the issue.
Yeah. Like, I know a lot of people don't necessarily think Rogue One was necessary because they're like,
Yeah,
the Death Star was so big, of course it had to have a weakness.
yeah,
You don't need to fix that.
yeah,
I, however, really like the idea that the weakness of the Death Star was put there by someone who was resistant to the Empire in the first place and found a little way to give them a weakness. I
yeah,
like that. But if you don't like that, I understand why you choose to just ignore that potentially. Um, but at the same time, don't then just try and force that on someone like Rogue One is pointless because
yeah.
it's all pointless. I say that as a massive nerd who sits here for multiple hours a week talking about nerdy crap. It's all pointless. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, especially in Star, it's like people are like, "Oh, the Disney stuff is like Disney's ruining it." It's like, actually, no, we're eating real fucking good in Star Wars, and that's thanks to Disney. And if you're a true Star Wars fan, like you'd just enjoy we're getting more Star Wars. Like,
If you don't like some of it, it's fine. Don't
yeah,
watch it. Don't try and ruin it for everyone else, though.
exactly.
Um, Whereas the Marvel infighting, I think, is quite different.
Yeah,
It seems to be less like camps that hold opinions, and it seems to be more they will find this one little thing, and then everyone will divide on that topic,
yeah,
and then it'll be. They seem to fight more on topics rather than on mentalities, if that makes sense.
yes,
Um, like Marvel fans will just debate whether a film is good or not, or whether an actor was good or not, or whatever. They'll just
or should they have
throw an
changed this
argument
canon?
up in the
Like,
air.
this
Yeah,
was changed from the comics. Was this right or wrong? And then you get people like fighting amongst themselves whether they should change things or not for films.
exactly. And like what the best version of a comic run is and stuff like this. It's not like in Star Wars, you'll find like three people who are all like part of the same cult, we'll call it, and they're
Hmm.
like OG trilogy only, blah blah blah. Whereas in Marvel, it seems to be you'll be fighting against someone on one point, but then on a different point, you guys are buddy buddy, and I think it kind of helps the toxicity come down a little bit because you never
Yeah,
know who's going to be your ally.
yeah.
They're
It's
like, I can't be too rude to you because you might agree with me about something else, and I'll need your help then.
yeah. It's like
It's very funny.
it's more often than not. It's like different points of view on some certain thing, and sometimes gets a bit toxic if one side's getting a bit too like, no, they shouldn't have changed, or like this is wrong. And if you accept that they've done this and you're right, like sometimes it gets to level, but not to the same degree near as that's like Star Wars does, like you say. But
Weirdness. Now, this I've left this a little bit open to interpretation. Let me be
yeah,
completely clear. All fandoms are weird.
Yeah.
The notion that we get on the internet and we all sit here talking about our make-believe worlds with such like passion that
Yeah.
like genuine anger happens is weird. We have to just accept that we're a bit weird for engaging in it, but it's fine.
Yeah.
I think the best level of weird in a fandom is just when they hit the level of like horny weird. I think that's the first level of weirdness. The Rule 34 weird. That every
Yeah, but
fandom
that
has
could
to
very
hit.
quickly be like there's
Yeah. Oh
there's
yeah.
been like, oh, that character's hot, and then it's like, okay, we didn't need to see that level of art about
Yeah,
that character.
yeah. So like that base level of weird, every fandom has to hit. Otherwise, I don't even think you're a fandom. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
After that, there's obviously severe levels of weird, and by the end, you're getting to the level of weird where you've got them sending death threats to another random stranger on the internet who disagreed with them, or to the actors or writers that are working on the project. And I'm categorizing all that under as weird. It's actually psychotic when you get to that level. It's
Yeah.
okay to be weird. We're all weird for engaging in fandoms. Don't be psychotic.
Yeah, I get you.
Star Wars is psychotic.
Yes, if you go too deep.
Yeah.
I think
And I think the problem is you don't have to like look too hard to start finding the psychotic Star Wars fans.
yeah, I think it's difficult though, because it's like I feel like that bleeds a bit into toxicity. But it's like I would almost say both of these fandoms have kind of base level pretty low weirdness nowadays because they've become such pop culture icons. Like it's pretty like normal now to be a fan of the MCU because of how big it got. Like your ordinary person became a fan. And Star Wars is so big and been around for so long that like it's not that weird to like Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think at a base level it's fine. And I think where it gets a bit weird, like you're saying, is there are like the step up from that for like Marvel is you've got your fans that like hardcore into comics. And it's like, you like comics, a little bit weird to be like really into comics, like hardcore or whatever. A little bit weird. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like the step up with Star Wars, when you get to like the people that like the books and stuff, they get like really like into specific, like this character is the best character. And it's like, okay, you're going a bit too hardcore.
Yeah.
That
You're
is a
getting really
little
defensive about a character that isn't even in lore because the books aren't lore anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, now like you're being a bit too weird about that side, like that depth of Star Wars compared to that depth of Marvel.
Exactly.
So it's difficult. Like surface level, I'd say not that weird, but like as you're getting deeper, like I could see Star Wars starts to come across a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to start finding the weirdos in Star Wars than it is in Marvel.
Yeah.
I just feel like you start to come across like the odd characters a little bit quicker. And maybe that's just because they're like you said, like we agreed, Star Wars is just a little bit smaller. So therefore you've got a higher chance of meeting one quicker.
Yeah.
I think raw numbers, there's probably about the same amount of weirdos.
Probably.
It's probably the same weirdos if we're being completely honest.
Most likely, actually, yeah.
Preference.
You're
only able to engage with one of these fandoms and never the other one. You're never allowed to like engage or talk about Star Wars with another person again, or you're never allowed to engage or talk about with Marvel with anyone ever again.
I actually feel like this is kind of easier for me. I think I know how this is going to go for both ways. For me, Star Wars came around first. I've never been like I'm not a big comic book reader. So like my surface level for Marvel is the MCU. I can step away from that fandom a lot easier than I could step away from Star Wars. I feel like I would miss getting to talk about Star Wars and being like engaged with Star Wars more than I think I would miss Marvel. Because I feel like you're the opposite.
Yeah. Obviously, I think in reality, I tweet about Star Wars more and like on the internet talk about Star Wars more.
Okay.
But if someone says you want to talk about Star Wars or you want to talk about Marvel, I'm taking Marvel every time. I think
Doesn't surprise me.
with Star Wars, I have more like concise, put together thoughts. Whereas when it comes to Marvel, I'm like, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about it. You want to talk about Golden Age, current age? You want to talk about an obscure character? Tell me everything you know. And as a result, I feel like that ends up being a more kind of in-person interaction because, like, on a Twitter or something,
Yeah,
it's more
I get
difficult
you.
to just kind of have this flow of consciousness about a topic. If we were to go on this podcast, we're not covering Star Wars, or we're not covering Marvel anymore, I'd fight you tooth and nail to get rid of the Star Wars. So I'm like, no, I have a lot more to say about Marvel, and that changes more and it evolves more. Whereas Star Wars, I've got my opinions. If I'm not allowed to state them opinions ever again, I can live with that.
Yeah, I get you. It's
I expected us to be split on this one, though.
Yeah. I think it's like if I was into the Marvel comics more, like you'd lean that way. But when my like discussion with Marvel is, oh, this happened in one of this MCU shows, like explain it. At the end of the day, like I'm just my interaction with the fandom is just learning more about why this happened in the MCU.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Wars, I'm like, oh, there's all this other stuff that's gone on in like different timelines. I'm a bit more intrigued about and I want to look into.
It's also like going to watch a Marvel film. I go with my family, Jenna's mum sometimes. Like there'll be like potentially like 7 of us going, and then
Yeah.
we'll get in a car afterwards and we'll sit there and talk about it. When a new Star Wars film comes out, I don't do that. Me and Jenna go. That's it.
Fair.
No, I just like it's just inherently the way it is. But it's time to tot it all up.
Yes, we've got to make the big decision for the rest of the viewers of what fandom is better.
Size, we agreed Marvel was larger.
Yes, we did.
Dedication, we gave to Star Wars.
Yes, we did.
Making it 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is less toxic? I think we agreed Marvel.
Yeah, we were feeling that Star Wars was more toxic, so that gives the point to Marvel.
Yeah. Infighting, I think Star Wars takes
Yeah, there's a lot more infighting in Star Wars, I feel.
Which would once again give the point to Marvel.
To Marvel, yeah.
Making it 3-1.
Yeah.
Weirdness, I think I'm okay with calling a draw.
Yeah. Because I think it's like surface level, they're not that weird, but as you get deeper in both of them, inherently it gets more weird.
And preference was split on.
Yeah.
Which would make it a 3-1 win for Marvel.
It does.
I can't say I'm surprised. Star Wars has a very negative reputation, so I can't say I'm surprised that it ends up going out pretty early to another juggernaut.
Yeah, and it's like Marvel has its issues, but it's so huge and so many people like Star Wars is quite well known. Like it has very high highs and very low lows of the fandom.
Yeah.
Like
I think as a general rule in this bracket though, the smaller ones are gonna do better.
Yeah.
Just purely like obviously they'll lose out on the size department, but as a general rule, if you're a smaller fandom, you have to be more dedicated.
Yeah,
you can't afford to be as weird and as toxic.
And you can't be infighting.
Yeah, because
not enough of you.
You won't exist anymore. You'll cease to exist.
Yeah.
But we will see how it goes. But that is the first episode of the Fandom Face-Off.
It is.
Will progress to the next round.
Let us know who you had as the better fandom. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree?
Which fandom do you think's better? Are you a Star Wars bro who hates the Marvel fandom?
And is going to start fighting with us?
Between the fandoms.
Yeah, we're going to now get in a fight with both fandoms.
But make sure you've liked the video. Make sure you subscribed. We will be doing more of these Fandom Face-Offs in the future.
Yes, we will.
I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in a bit.
We'll see you in the next one.